And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Unity Hangout. My name is Will.
My name's Aurore.
And we are here with the Unity UI team to talk you through some of the developments in Unity 4.6. So some of the stuff we're going to be doing is to do with Unity 4.6, but specifically we want to talk to you today about the UI system. So we have the team here. We're going to do some introductions in a second. But the first thing I wanted to do is just switch over to them because I will forget to do that. So say hi, everybody.
Hello.
There they are. Cool. Okay, so guys, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell everyone a bit about what you do.
Hi,
I mean, anyone first. That's cool.
I'm Tim. I'm looking after various parts of the UI system, specifically things like the event system and how it sort of interacts and talks with components, and a whole lot of other things sort of around the fringes of that kind of stuff.
I'm Phil. I've been mainly doing like the canvas render and input field.
I'm Rune. I've been doing mainly the layout and rec transform and the auto layout system with layout groups and stuff like that.
I'm Leo. I've been doing the inspectors and bug fix in general and just anything that doesn't fall in the other areas, I guess, like faults to cracks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's in general, but there's a lot of overlap. We've been working a bit on all of it, all of us, mostly.
Cool. Okay, so basically the way that these Hangouts work is that we have the video live on YouTube. So if you're not watching us on YouTube, if you're watching us on our Google Plus channel, head over to YouTube directly now and watch it there. There you'll see the comments next to the video. They are live instead of the usual stream of YouTube comments. So you can post your question in there. We will pick it out and we'll be posing the questions to the guys directly. So let's have a look at the chat that we've got right now. So just to dive into some of these questions, there's an interesting one which a few people have asked already. So Ankit Prayer asks, is it possible to have a 3D component as a UI element? So presumably he's talking about using mesh renderers and 3D elements that exist within Unity already, combined with the UI system and the best way to go about that.
So currently support for having 3D elements within the UI is quite rudimentary. We're using the rect transform stuff. You can position a 3D object where you want it to be in the UI, but the rendering order isn't necessarily correct. You can do some fixes to work around this using canvas sorting layers and that kind of thing, and putting your 3D element on a separate canvas that renders at a different time. But we don't think it's as good as we want it to be yet. We have plans on our roadmap to address this after the first release, and in that kind of way we're going to be allowing any kind of generic renderer to be inserted onto a canvas render pass.
Cool, so for now, work around it a little bit. It will be better.
You can do it. It's too much work, and it's probably not as robust and reliable as it needs to be, but we're going to be adding it, better support for it in the future.
It's also one workaround as well, depending on how much 3D you have, and if you can spare, is to use a render texture as well, which makes things a bit easier.
Okay, cool. So the next question is from Seath CG, who asks, could you please talk a little about the reference resolution component and what that does?
Yeah, by default, when you have a canvas that is in screen space mode, either screen space overlay or screen space camera, one pixel in the rect transform corresponds to, one unit in the rect transform corresponds to one pixel on the screen. And that means that the bigger the resolution is, the smaller comparatively all the UI elements will appear, because they have the same sizes in units, unless you have stretching. But that amount of pixels is part of a larger screen, so they appear smaller. what the reference resolution component does, if you have that on the canvas, is that you specify a reference resolution that is the width and height you want to work with as a reference, and then you lay out your elements according to those assumed assumed width and height. And then if the actual resolution of the screen is smaller or bigger than that, then it scales everything up or down correspondingly, so that all your UI elements become larger or smaller together with the screen. There's one catch to that, so it always makes sure that each pixel is still square, so you can control via the component settings if it should be the screen size or the screen height that should control how much scaling should occur. Or you can also set it to be something in between and a weight average. And that makes sure that even if your reference resolution has a different aspect ratio than the actual screen resolution you're currently using, then things will not be stretched unevenly in the two directions. It will still remain square, and you can use the different anchorings to make sure that things that should be aligned to corners or edges are still aligned correctly.
Okay, cool. So this kind of leads into a question from Patrick Henschel, who says, I'd like to know if there is a solution of the SD-HD problem in the new UI system. I played around a bit, but not found it. I used NGUI before, and there are reference atlases for that. So what do we say to that, guys?
So we have, the layout system is made pretty much for supporting different resolutions, but we have a gap in functionality where it comes to switching out some sprites for different sprites if you want a custom-made lower resolution sprite, a higher resolution. That is something we're very aware of, and it's something we're going to address in some of the releases that come after 4.6. In 4.6, you will have to manually create some scripts that will switch out the sprite references depending on what if you want a SD or HD sprite. And we have some talks from, I think, members of the 2D team who have addressed similar problems. We have some talks, I believe they're online, that recommend some recommendations for how you can implement these workarounds today. We lost sound.
Sorry, my bad. There's a talk from Unite that Veli did, I think, that covers that. So check out the 2D talk from Unite 2014 over on the YouTube channel. So the next question we have is from Pablo Bolance. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And they ask, is it possible to use the event system to have, for instance, in-game buttons? So a 3D model you can use as a button and get the on-click and other events.
Yes, that is very possible. So the event system is actually quite generic, and it's not just for the UI. If you have a look in the component list we have, you'll notice that there's a component called the Physics 3D Raycaster, or the Physics Raycaster. And what that does is it hooks up 3D physics and raycasting into the event system. So if you have one of these in the world and you click on a 3D object that has a mesh collider or a box collider or something that also has one of these callbacks implemented, then it will receive the callback. If you have a look in the example project that we have made available, in the widget scene there is a bunny, and that actually does this thing. It has a 3D collider on it that you can click on, and the bunny will change color using the event system.
That's a good point that you raise actually there, Tim. So we didn't mention this at the top of the show, but basically what we should say is that there are a number of different ways that you can get into the new UI system. On the Learn section of the site, you'll find a set of tutorials under Beginner UI topic. So you go to Learn, Tutorials, Beginner UI. And also there is the project that Tim just mentioned, which is available via the forum thread. So if you go onto the forum, I believe it's called the Developer Forum, is that right?
Yeah, it's Developer Preview Forum. Says
Cool. So Unity 4.6 forum, you'll find the thread with the link to that project there. And we're updating that with each beta just to fix and change a few things around. So what's next? So there's another good question which I think some people might have missed out on. Fernando Perez Alonso asks, is it correct to use a rect transform to group UI components? The answer is yes, and you guys can explain why if you like.
Do you want to handle this one, Rune?
Yeah, so the basically with the layout system, it's specifically made so that you can group things inside rect transforms and create nested behaviors that way. If you want something to stretch together with the parent rect transform, then you can do that. You don't need to have an image or text on every rect transform. It's a completely normal workflow in the system to have just an empty rect transform that only serves a purpose of being a layout container that you can have other elements inside in order to have this hierarchical control over how the layout is built.
Cool. So basically everything's relative.
Sorry?
So everything's kind of relative to a parent, so rect transforms are there for grouping and so forth.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so more questions. So there's a kind of a fundamental question that I think maybe might be useful for those who are totally unfamiliar with new versus old systems. So Jonathan Iyer asks, what are the main advantages of the new system compared to the old system? Also, will I have to rewrite all my current GUI code to get it to work in 4.6? So that's kind of a bit of a can of worms, this question. So the old system, on GUI system, was pretty much code-based. You could do some design work using UI skins, but basically they're not really comparable systems. I mean, you guys can elaborate a little bit on that, but yeah, you would have to rewrite things ultimately.
Yeah, so when we went in and started working on the new UI system, we wanted something that didn't just work for programmers and didn't just work for artists. We wanted something that would be easy for, say, a designer or a graphics artist to put together a UI, but also something that a programmer could take and massively extend and write completely new widgets if they wanted to. So what we have in the new UI system is essentially like a big framework for creating widgets and tools and components for your interface to your game. Out of the box, we're providing a few components, and we'll be adding more as time goes on. But the exact tools we're using are the tools that we expose to you. So anything we can do, essentially you can do, and you can extend and change along the way. This is true for the event system as well as all of the inbuilt controls and how the vertices are generated and things like that. Unfortunately, there is no code overlap between the old system and the new system, and there are a few reasons for that. One of the primary ones is that the new UI system actually maintains state between frames if nothing's changing. And what this means is we don't need to regenerate vertices or regenerate batches and that kind of thing if you have a static scene. And when things do change, we try and regenerate them in as fast a way as possible to minimize performance issues. What this means is that the new UI system is much more lightweight in terms of the performance cost per frame. And it's it's also much more extendable, so you can do quite a lot more with it once you get used to its workflows and that kind of thing.
One clarification though. You're asking, will I have to rewrite all my current GUI to get it to work in 4.6? Strictly speaking, no. If you just want it to be the same as it was, then no, because we still support the old GUI system. But if you want to make use of the new system, then yes, you will have to rewrite it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought of that. Okay, so NeoGene is our next person to ask, and he asks, will there be available a simple mode to create different component layouts for different screen resolutions? Creating different scenes is time consuming. So I assume the question here is asking, and I may be making too much an assumption, but I assume what they're asking is, will we provide templates, sort of widget style, to kind of get you going for different resolutions? What do you think about that, guys?
So what we have is a system that makes it easy to anchor and stretch different UI elements and how they're aligned. What we don't have is a system for complete changing the layout completely for different resolutions. So if you want a completely custom layout for one resolution and then it changes to something completely different for a different one, that's not something we are supporting out of the box. And we haven't really seen a lot of requests for it, so it's not right now on our roadmap either.
But you could check for the resolution and do it in code and switch to a different layout?
You can definitely do that. And I mean, you can create different layouts and just disable and enable them if you want to. But it sounded like that was what they wanted to avoid a bit. So let's see. I'm not quite sure what the question implies, if we should have templates or what exactly it means. But I mean, you can create different layouts if that's what you want, or if you want to have something more unified where the layout is basically the same but stretches and resizes in different ways, then you can do that too.
Cool. So, I mean, if Neogene, you want to get back and clarify your question, feel free. We'll move on to the next one in the meantime. Tofel Redden asks, will there be more text font options, such as gradients, outlines, and shadows? So that's something you guys can definitely talk about.
So in 4.6, we actually have outlines and shadows support already. We think it's quite rudimentary, but the support is there. What we actually plan to do moving forward after 4.6 is rewrite an extensive part of the text rendering in Unity, because we're not quite happy with how it works for the UI system, and we don't think it offers you enough power to change things and get things to look exactly how you want them to. Yeah, so right now we're using essentially the legacy text rendering system, which is what you see whenever you use the editor or you have a text mesh in your game or anything like that. And as we move forward, we're going to be addressing a lot of the shortcomings with the text system as we replace it with a new and more shiny one.
Cool, thanks. So this next question is something that a lot of people have been asking, and it's something that goes back to the previous question about moving from the old system to the new system. And that question is from R618, who asks, hi, are UI elements / the whole UI creatable via code? If not, what is and what is not? So there it is, guys.
It's all creatable via code.
Cool, good talk.
It is all creatable by code. There's a few good practices that are good to keep in mind. Even though you can set up everything from code, you'll probably have an easy time if you try to create prefabs from things you want to be able to reuse, such as buttons and other components, and then instantiate those prefabs instead of setting up every game object and component from scratch in the code. Another thing is there's a new method on the transform component called setParent. It's a good idea to use that one with keep world space position set to false when reparenting, because that makes sure that the local coordinates are kept instead of keeping the UI element at the same world space position. Let's see, what was the other thing?
It's in the manual. There's some best practice guides already.
Yes, there's some best practices in the manual. We have a section on the UI called how-tos, and I would generally recommend to have a brief look at least all of them, so because we get a lot of questions about those things, and that's why we added them.
Cool. So at the very least, read absolutely everything, and it'll be fine. Okay, cool. So the next question is from, let me just check. Oh, okay. So it's from Philcon12, who asks, any plans to support some modern UI features like data binding, MVVM, etc.?
Yeah, so for 4.6, we were really concerned with getting a really strong foundation and the fundamentals of the UI system correct, especially with regards to the rendering and the components we had. After we ship that, we're going to be investigating data binding and that kind of thing further. We know it's something that people are requesting, and we don't have it yet.
Cool. Next question is something that I'm pretty sure we already have in place due to animation. So Neural Short asks, will there be support for animated sprites as UI elements directly on buttons, panels, etc.? That's already the case, isn't it, guys?
Yes, we in 4.6 we added support for animating any p-pointer value, which essentially means any kind of object reference on a mono behavior. And because the UI components are mono behaviors, it means that you can animate the sprite reference on an image and it will update and change.
So I think the confusion that's actually occurring here is that if you're used to the 2D system and the sprite renderer as of 4.3 onwards, you'll be used to animating the sprite renderer and changing the sprite that's actually assigned to that in order to create your sprite animation. Obviously, the image parts of the UI system have that sprite reference as well, so that's the thing that you want to be animating. I'm right in saying that, guys?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Next question is from Edithson Abelard, who asks, how many instances of the canvas can you have before performance hits? I mean, how long is a piece of string, guys?
Really, there's no defined limit. The more canvases you have, you'll get more draw calls. But at the same time, more canvases also means each canvas has to process less. So if you have, what am I going to say? If you have a canvas or a whole bunch of elements that are constantly moving, then if those are in one canvas and another canvas is just static elements, that'll perform better because it doesn't have to reprocess all those static elements all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's really no upper limit that we've hit as of yet.
I think some of the confusion people have had is that they've felt like they need to reuse a canvas when they're making like a panel or something like that, and then they haven't spotted that you can just use a standard rect transform to make, you know, a different area of the UI on screen. So perhaps if you're using multiple canvases for that reason, then you know that's one thing to perhaps avoid because it's not necessary. But I mean, Phil, what's a good reason to use canvases over multiple canvases over not using them?
Well, as I just said, like having animated or constantly moving elements on one canvas and like a static background or overlay in another would be a really good use for multiple canvases.
Okay, fair enough.
And that should also work if they're nested canvases as well. So if you want to keep them all together, you can just nest them and it should work.
Cool. Okay, so the next question we have is from Borja Dominguez, who says, there is a touch input module, but it doesn't work on Windows, so it's not consistent and cross-platform. What do we know about that?
So I guess I have a question. What does he mean by Windows in this context? Is it Windows 8 Touch or Windows 7 Touch? If something in this regard isn't working as you expect, please report a bug. We're still in beta, and we have a lot of platform coverage to get through, and we may miss, say, a specific version of Windows Touch along the way. And
so he's talking about Windows.
Yeah.
Mobile.
Oh, really? So he asked previously, I think we missed his question further up the comments. There's a question saying, any information using the UI system on Windows multi-touch screens. So I'm not sure whether he means on their tablets or I don't know. Feel free to fire us some more information on that.
I would like to. So, like, if you have questions as well, like we're always on the forums. The forums has been very helpful to us, and like the users have been helping each other as well. So, if you have questions, feel free to just post there. and we're present there all the time. So feel free to use that tool. It's very helpful for us as well to get direct touch with you guys. So
cool.
Small tip.
So there's another question from Epic Arrow Productions who asks, can the UI work with the Oculus Rift?
Yes, it can. So there's a few modes that the UI system works in. There's the first one, which is the simple one, which is screen space, which just renders it on top. There's the screen space perspective, which allows you to add some perspective to your canvas. But the one that's more interesting in this is actually using a world space canvas. And you need to use this in Oculus because you need to get the canvas to render into both cameras, whereas the first two modes just render in an overlay. So what you do is you configure your canvas in the world, probably attach it to the camera so it moves around with the camera, and then both the cameras. On the forums, someone has created a input module specifically for Oculus, and what this does is it uses a specific point to raycast from that is between the two cameras. But other users have reported that that's not necessary depending on how their scene's set up, and just selecting a camera to use for raycasting works just as well. But yes, it does work with the Oculus. We have users already creating UIs with it for the Oculus. So
you recommend diving on the forum and grabbing that as a starting point, or?
At least read the thread, because we cover some best practices there and some setup guides on how to do it.
Cool. There's another good question here from Jarmadax who asks, as Unity is lacking proper tools for drawing lines, straight and Bezier, as well as other shapes, will the new UI system have drawing tools?
We don't actually have that on our roadmap currently, but it's something that would probably make sense to add at a later date once we get a few of the other things out of the way, which we consider higher priority. One thing I know is that Vectrosity, I think it is, which is an asset store package, the person writing that is actually upgrading it with UI support. So very soon you should be able to use vectored graphics and things in the new UI system using the third-party tool. And it's probably something we'll get around to at some stage, but I can't give an estimate on when that would be at all.
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate that Vectrosity is a third-party package. If you have a look on the asset store, you'll find it there. And just to kind of follow up on that point, Tim, you know, a lot of people will be asking about vector support in the new UI system, and I mean, we spoke about it briefly before. You explained that it is actually extendable, so someone could actually extend it to make vector support before we get a chance to add it ourselves.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, so back to the chat. So, okay, so simple question from Raphael Astier who asks, does the new UI provide touch events like drag, swipe, or double tap, or do we have to code it ourselves?
The current touch input module doesn't support these events out of the box, but they're relatively easy to add.
Supports drag.
Users on the forums have already added these to some of their custom events to support things like swipe. Oh, yeah, sorry, we do support drag, obviously, and double tap. But some of the more advanced gestures like pinch and rotate, we don't support out of the box, but they can be added by extending the event system.
So, I mean, can we throw examples like that on the forum, or are people posting their actual code on there already?
People are posting examples of pinch, for example. I was looking at one of those on the forums yesterday.
Cool. So, some good resources there. Next question from Tom Caden, who asks, what new exciting features are you planning for the UI? So, presumably, this is stuff that we haven't heard about. What's on the roadmap?
All right, so that's a few things. First of all, like Tim have already mentioned, we're going to replace and rewrite the text rendering system. That should hopefully make it a lot better working with just text in the UI. Then there's some improvements we want to make to the game view. It will not only be useful for UI, but it will particularly be useful for UI, and that is to support resolutions that are larger than the game view actually is itself. We don't support it very well right now, and we want to do that. Let's see,
But basically, the first thing we're going to be doing after we ship 4.6 is looking at where we feel the system's lacking and where you guys and girls out there feel the system is lacking. And what we really want to do at that stage is address your pain points and make things easy for you. So the best thing to do is speak up on the forums about where you think you would like to, the UI to go, and we'll take it in that direction.
And actually the feedback side too, because would make it easier for us to see which things have the most requests behind them.
Cool. So next question is, well, the next question is from me actually, because I meant to ask this one, so I'm going to wait for a different question, but I'm going to ask my question first, because I'm cheeky like that. So we've talked about open sourcing. What will be the ramifications of that, and when will we do it? Will we do it when we ship, or when's the open source thing going to happen for the UI?
Our current goal is to do it as soon as we can after we ship. There's one or two logistical things we need to sort out before we can physically flick the switch, but we want to do it sooner rather than later. The goal will be that the source will be available to you. You should be able to take it and modify it however you feel for your personal projects, or extend it however you feel. And if you notice something that you would like fixed pretty urgently, or a bug fix you want in, we'll be happy to take pull requests for those kind of things from you.
Cool. We have our good friend NeoGene back again with another question. He's asking, will the new UI be the same between 4.6 and 5 releases?
Yes, currently it will be.
Cool. So obviously, just to be very clear there, he said 4.6 and 5 releases, plural. So at some point, 5.0 will continue to be developed, and new elements are bound to be added to the UI. So they won't always be the same, we should clarify. Cool. Next question.
Oh, no, so
It's nice. There's quite a lot of people just saying nice things. Someone asking when Unity 5 come, but that we're not answering that. That's not going to happen.
well, it will happen.
No, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to answer it. Yeah.
So, I mean, I can comment a bit on that. So the reason we cannot really talk about when it's going to be released is that there's a few factors at play. There's us that are fixing bugs. That means that number of bugs decreases down towards 0. But at the same time, there's all of you who are sending new bug reports in, and that is making the bug count go up. And we want to reach about 0 bugs. Well, we can't reach 0 bugs, but 0 critical bugs at least. But it's not entirely in our own control, so it's a bit unpredictable when we actually reach that, because we keep getting new bugs in.
And this isn't to say stop reporting bugs, because we do actually very much appreciate the effort you put into reporting bugs so that we can fix them for you.
Yes, and the other thing is that you're of course free to use the UI even though it's not been officially shipped yet, the final release. One exception is that if you're using web player, of course you cannot ship your final game with it, but for other platforms you're free to do so. It's on your own risk, but if you're not seeing any problems, then go for it.
Cool. So we have some more questions, which is nice. Jamadex asks, does going open source mean you are outsourcing UI development? No, it does not, but you guys can explain why that. I mean, you still want your jobs, right? Okay, it's been a long road.
Sorry, that was a bit dry.
So, next question, moving swiftly on. It doesn't mean open sourcing, outsourcing UI development, but of course we do want contributions from the community, and that's why we want to do open source with more parts of Unity. Just to be totally clear about that. Oh.
Actually, to just clarify on the open source we talked about before, so we said that you can take the source code, modify it as you want, and that means, I mean, you can clone it or have your own copy of it and make all the modifications you want to that. We're not going to just let anyone do any modifications to the official version of the UI. We're taking in bug fixes, but that's about the extent of the of what we are guaranteed to take in. But there's going to be a lot more news on that later.
Cool. So we have another question. Dubious Architect asks, any plan to support bitmap fonts? Someone else asked this question earlier. I apologize, I missed their question. I'm just trying to spot it. I can't. So someone else had said that they have a problem, given that they're doing a pixel-based game. The text font rendering isn't sharp because it's alias, right?
So there are two different questions. I'll address the first one first because I remember seeing it in the stream. And the question was, by default, the Unity fonts are basically imported using bilinear filtering instead of point sampling. This is unfortunately an issue that we have in Unity and have had for a long time. And once again, I'm going to say that we'll be fixing these kind of issues when we upgrade the text rendering system, because we really don't want to go and touch too much of the legacy text rendering at this stage. If you can create a bug report actually about this, we might be able to sneak something in, but I can't make any promises about it, just depending on how severe the issues you're seeing are with regards to the text rendering in this case.
Did you want to talk really briefly about the pixel perfect thing on Canvas, Tim? I noticed that makes a difference.
Oh, well, that may or may not be related depending on what the person's saying.
Okay, fair enough. So the next question, the actual one that I started with, was Dubious Architects. Any plan to support bitmap fonts?
Okay. Yes, we already support bitmap fonts. If you just have a standard imported bitmap font, it should work properly with the text component. One thing you need to do is you need to set the text element to have the default size, and you can't use markup or stylings because they don't exist in the bitmap font.
Cool, thanks. Then Adrian Rodriguez says, is it okay to ship a final version of a game with the beta?
Yes.
Except if it's web player.
Yeah, so yeah, Rune is right. So the only real sort of restriction there is that the beta, when it ships, will only work with people who have the beta web player themselves. So if your end user doesn't have that player, it won't play back properly. So for anything else, no reason to, and we don't have any license-based restrictions that will preclude you from doing that at all. Okay, so more questions. Lizzie Lees asks, where will the open source be? Will it be GitHub?
I'm not sure we've decided on the final location yet, but I think the two choices were between Bitbucket and GitHub. But I'm not responsible for that decision, or we're not responsible for that. That's part of the open source initiative team's stuff, and we're just going to put it where they tell us to.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so the part two to that question is, will you accept pull requests? But you might have just missed that. They said, yes, we will.
Yes, oh, well, it depends on the pull request.
Oh yeah, not any, I mean.
Yeah, so we're going to be setting out a bit of a manifesto when we open source it. You are free to take and change the code however you want for your own projects, but there will be sort of specific criteria we want to meet for things we take back, sort of based on the goals of what we're working on internally. And we haven't quite come up with what that is yet, so stay tuned, I guess.
Cool. I mean, we've kind of covered this ground slightly, but Sean Haddies says, when do you intend to upgrade the text rendering system?
As soon as we can. I can't comment on what release that will be, but it will not be during 4.6, that's for sure.
Yeah, so you guys, I mean, you're super focused on just getting a robust system before polishing the individual parts, right? Is that fair to say?
We anticipate the text rendering upgrade will be a Unity-wide thing, so it won't just be for the UI system. So it's might be a fair chunk of work.
Okay. Cool. The next question I think needs a little bit of clarification. So Raphael Astier asking, what is the typical way to make dynamic UI with the new UI? So dynamic is quite a broad term. I'm assuming, Raphael, you're talking about UI that can scale, etc. So Rune, you could give a brief overview of that?
Yeah, I'm actually interpreting it differently. I assume he means UIs where UI elements are created and destroyed or rearranged at runtime, so that you cannot set up the layout completely in the editor. And I mean, the typical way is the same as with other scripting in Unity. You have some scripts where you have your game logic, and if some button needs to be shown, then you typically you would have a prefab and a reference to that prefab in a script, and you then instantiate the prefab. Use the setParent method to making it a child of some rect transform in the canvas. If you need to add additional component, you can do that, and you can hook up events using the delegate part of the Unity events in the different components, such as buttons, and using that, you basically build up things from code roughly the same way as you would set them up in the editor, just using the API instead.
Cool. So we have a slightly confused, possibly confusing question. So Neogene again asks, the new UI system will perform the same on HTML5 in Unity 5 using the mscripton compiler. I think there's some confusion there to do with WebGL.
Well, so with the UI system, it basically generates vertices and uses textures and materials that get rendered. So it depends on basically the platform's rendering performance as to the performance of the system. We've seen the UI system working quite well on HTML5 internally. It's pretty cool. I like it. I don't have any performance benchmarks with me here at the moment because we haven't really looked closely at that yet because we've been concentrating more on 4.6 and 5. But it's something we will be looking at when we start checking out that it works correctly on 5.
Okay, cool. So a question related to the open source discussion from a moment ago. Jarmadax asks, so if someone codes a kick-ass feature into the UI system, will you take that into the official release, capital E?
So basically, we are not making any guarantees to take in anything except for bug fixes. Everything will be on a case-by-case basis. There will probably be some times where it will seem a bit strange, like, okay, this feature is really useful, why are we not taking it in? But in Unity, there's also a concern that if we just add everything that has great functionality, then it would just pile on, and everything would end up being very complex. We have a very strict focus on also keeping things simple, and that means having few options, few extra functionality, and keep it lean and simple. So it's always a trade-off, and there's probably some things that we're going to decide to take in, but there's very likely also going to be a lot of things that we are not going to take in. The upside to that is that, of course, you can still use it even if we are not taking it in, because you can just use this custom version instead.
Asset store. You can sell your package.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, Phil. You can elaborate. Feel free.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it.
Yeah, so obviously, like, a lot of people will be taking this open source stuff, making their own components, making, as was said, kick-ass features. Obviously, what you're welcome to do is then sell those features. If you have something that you want to distribute, you can use the asset store as a way to, distribute stuff if you want to. But yeah, moving back to the questions. So Jack OVD, I'm not reading that the way it's written, is setting the game object's enabled disabled state a recommended way to switch between multiple panels for menu window scenario?
Sure, it's a fair way to do it. What we see a lot of people doing is animating a transition, then enabling and disabling windows. So it's not just quick on and off. So they might fade something out, then disable it, for example, rather than just turn it straight off. But yes,
yeah,
that is the recommended way. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, I was going to say one way that I've done it is to do just that, is to have your animator, your state machine, be in control of the different parts of the menu you're in. So as Tim was saying, one advantage of that is you can do any kind of animation that you want between those different states. So you just put your on-off toggle at the end of, on the kind of final keyframe, and then you kind of, fade it out and switch it off, and then you fade the other one in at the same time in your timeline. Okay, so getting back to questions. Sebastian Masselet asks, will you expose methods currently only for dev, like being able to update or recalculate the size of a panel? It would be super useful when we add buttons dynamically inside a panel.
I'm not completely sure I understand the question. You?
Me neither.
This is the layout system, so because with the layout system, if you add a button into a layout, it'll automatically resize the parent.
Yes, there's a catch. If you are reliant on the new size, new calculated size calculated by the auto layout system immediately after adding or changing elements inside it, then there is a method you need to call on the canvas called force update something. It's in the scripting reference for the canvas, and if you call that, it will immediately recalculate the layout and all sizes will be correct after that. If you don't do that, then it will be correct right before the frame renders, so basically in the next frame. And the reason why we only do the calculations right at the end of the frame is so that we prevent doing it multiple times per frame, which would be worse for performance.
Okay, so look for force update in there, and I think ultimately what you hit on there, Rune, the content size fitter is possibly what they're looking for, something that will update when they dynamically are adding parts to a menu. Is that right?
Could be. I couldn't tell the details.
Okay, so going back to the questions, Ray Nothnagel says, right now it's difficult to use rect transform via code because there are none of the convenience functions, left, xpos, etc., that the inspector has. Any plans to add those as API functions? So that requires a little bit of explanation there, Rune, I think.
Yes, so basically what we are doing in the inspector is that we're showing the data of the rect transform in different ways depending on whether you have set it to stretch on one axis or two axes, or it's just a constant size. And if it's a constant size, then there's very much an equivalent in the API. The width and height you set using the property called size delta. It corresponds directly to the width and height you see in the inspector. And the position X and Y in the inspector corresponds to the API property called anchored position. If it is stretching on one axis or more, so that you get instead left and right, or top and bottom, then the closest equivalent is the offset min and offset max. The offset max has the values reversed compared to the top and right properties in the inspector. We are considering if maybe we should add some methods that are more direct equivalences. But in any case, the reason it's a bit different is that the API always have to be the same, but the inspector shows things in different ways. So there's not completely a one-to-one.
Okay, cool. The next question is an interesting one. RuneLink Andre says, is moving UI elements in and out of the canvas area without disabling them a good way to make a dynamic UI?
So, I mean, if it works fine for you, then it's good. If you are getting performance problems because of a whole lot of elements that are outside of the canvas area, not visible but still enabled, then you can consider disabling them.
I mean, one thing to mention is that I think some people will probably end up using a lot of areas that are masked out, so they'll slide in panels that are outside without disabling. Do you always recommend trying to disable the game objects if they can, or?
It really depends on the complexity of the scene. Like for me, I'm partial to disabling all the time, just because I really want to know there's no overhead. But if it's not something very simple like a button or an image you're going to slide onto the screen, I'd probably just leave it.
Okay, so to go back to the question, should the user that's putting stuff outside of the canvas try and do some disabling, enabling on stuff that's not within the kind of camera frustum, or?
Well, so as you move it out of the canvas, you're aware that you've moved it out of the canvas. So if you're animating, I would just also animate the active flag on the game object. Whereas if you're using tweens, I would just call disable the game object as well at the end.
Cool. Next question is related to mobile stuff, I think. Ankit Priya asks, is there any way to have only numeric keyboards with input fields for Android and iOS, etc.?
Yes, there should be. I'm pretty sure it's the input type, enum. It may not be exposed in the inspector, although it should be. I'll take a look after this, and if it's not, I will. But I'm pretty sure I exposed it in one of the latest betas. Okay,
so in other words, look for a drop-down. If it's not there, it will be.
Yep.
And that's input type, right, Phil?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Next question is from Jama Dax asking, how is the equivalent of repeat button handled in the new UI system? Will it send an event when pressed and another one when released, or what?
Do you want to have this one, or do you want me? Okay, I'll talk about this. We don't have a repeat button in the UI at the moment. But what you can do is you can take the existing button, you can extend it, and in the on pointer down function, start a coroutine that does the repeating code, and then the on pointer up, stop the coroutine. And that will behave like a repeat button while you're pressing on the button.
Cool. Next question from Eve Albuquerque, who asks, how will focus be handled in 4.6?
Do you know what this means?
Navigation system, maybe?
So as in, the current focus of which button is selected. So, I mean, you can just talk about, we've already got that stuff, right?
Yeah, right. So we have a concept of selected UI elements. That one UI element can be the selected one that takes keyboard control. What's called keyboard presses. And there's a system for how you navigate between different UI elements using the keyboard. You can also do it using some sticks on control or similar. We have this system for where you can say if you press the arrow down or up, which other component should the focus move to. And you can set this up in the inspector, and there's also a way to visualize it that you can toggle on in the inspector. I'm not sure if that completely answers the question, but otherwise follow up.
Okay, cool. A question that I missed earlier from Daniel Goodale, who asks, is your UI system event-driven? If so, can I add listeners?
Yes, it is event-driven. And you can add listeners. The way it works is, well, I should preface this by saying we're going to be adding quite a bit of documentation soon about the event system and how it works and how to extend it. But essentially, you write a mono behavior and you implement some interfaces. Then if that object that the mono behavior is on is in a state to receive a callback, then it will receive the callback on that interface. If you wish to have listeners that can be configured via the UI, you can then add a Unity event to this mono behavior that gets called when one of these interfaces gets invoked.
Cool. Cool Guy 6316 has been living under a rock and asks, will we be able to make 3D UI?
Yeah, I think you can answer this one, Will.
Okay. Yes. So Tim and I made a quick video where we showed off how you can make 3D UI. So if you look back on the blog, search for Unity 4.6 on there and look for something with the graphic of an orange astronaut girl, and you'll see our video there where we ramble through how you do that. So next question.
One moment.
Oh, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, so in case you meant 3D objects in the UI, there was a question about that earlier. I don't know if you were on the stream at that point, but you can check it out afterwards.
Yeah, so check out the question on 3D stuff right at the start for that. Next is Chris Ferguson. So this one is a question that's kind of an opportunity to clean up some confusion as far as I can see. So he asks, performance-wise, what's the best way to update GUI on mobile, such as the text or icon fill? Is it the update function?
Well, so with the UI system, we took a really solid stance where we didn't want to have, or we wanted to have as few update functions in the UI components as possible. And this is because if you have update functions, they get invoked by Unity every frame. Even if you just check a flag and then return. There's still the overhead of calling from the C++ side of the code into the C# code, which can add up over time. So in the UI system, we basically do everything in a lazy or event-driven manner. So for example, when the event system is one of the few components in the UI system that has a update loop. And what it does is it handles pointer clicks and mouse movement and that kind of thing on a standalone player. So let's say, for example, you click on a button. The button doesn't have any update code in it. It just receives the event from the click and then does the color changes at that time. And this is the best way to do it. Use the event system we have to listen for events and then update based on the events you receive. Don't sit there in a loop waiting for a state change that may or may not come, because it just eats CPU cycles.
Cool. So if you want to learn about the difference between update and events and things like that, if you haven't looked at them before, you can go on to our beginner and intermediate scripting tutorial. So go to Learn Tutorial Scripting, and you'll see information on there. So if you've just only used update for things before, if you're a beginner, then I recommend checking that stuff out. So we have a few minutes left. We're running up to the top of the hour. So if you have a question that you were about to ask, then get that in now, and we'll try and answer that if we can. The next question is from Jason Carey, who says, I'm using a button with an event... Oh, okay.
Sorry, there's a double.
There's a double whammy of questions. I thought you were rephrasing it.
No.
This is totally professional, don't worry about it. Okay, so Jason Carey first asked, I'm using a button with an event trigger pointer down and pointer up exit to have the player hold a button for an amount of time before it's executed. This works fine with a mouse, but on Android Touch it seems to call pointer up instantly even though I hold my finger on the screen. Is there a better way to control this?
There was actually a bug in the touch input module in beta 18. I'm not sure if it's been fixed for beta 19, but I fixed it yesterday, so it's coming, and that should resolve this situation you're seeing.
This takes me back to Neural Short's question from earlier that we missed. He said, is beta 19 right around the corner? What's in it?
So beta 19 is a whole bunch of bug fixes and small improvements for the most part. Almost all of them based off bug reports and feedback we've received from you on the forums and through the bug tracker. So thank you for that, and good work in reporting all those issues you found. It's in the oven right now, which means it's going through our build machine and that kind of thing. I think we're just waiting for a 4.5 release to go out so we can put the latest 4.5 code into it, so it's completely up to date with what's in 4.5.
Well, good news for you, Tim. 4.5.4 came out just today.
That's right, and that's what I think we're waiting for. So either late this week or early next week, I would expect it. Okay,
cool. And what I think will be our last question, unless anyone gets anything else exciting in, Dubious Architect asks, is there any optimization under the hood for skipping rendering of UI elements when they are hidden by masks? So, for example, a scrollable area with lots of elements, is it optimized to hide those ones that you can't actually see?
So actually, I just started looking into this today, trying to figure out the best way to hide elements that aren't rendered. It's in the works. There will be a solution eventually. So yes, but not right now.
Yeah. This is one of those things that seems quite simple when you look at it from a 2D UI, but when you start to get to a 3D UI with things offset by depth into the mask, it gets much more complex because things can potentially change frame to frame depending on how you're viewing the UI. So it's something we want to have a look into further, but we don't have a good technical solution just yet.
Okay, cool. So just to kind of wrap up with a few things, we are done for questions. So thank you very, very much for coming along and watching. Thanks to you guys, Rune, Tim, Leo, Phil, much appreciated. Thanks for you for joining us. We will be doing future Hangouts. We'll probably do another UI Hangout in the future. I'm putting you guys on the spot. Are you up for that? Yes. At least 2 people, possibly 4, are up for that. Awesome. Okay, the next Unity Hangout will be on IL2CPP/WebGL. So if you're interested in those topics, keep an eye on all of our social channels. And one other additional thing I wanted to say about the UI system is if you're new to Unity and you wanted to make a project that includes the UI system, do go on to our Learn area and look for the new tutorial project. It's called Nightmares Survival Shooter. So if you go to Unity Learn, then go to Tutorial Projects, and then you'll see the project there. It's basically the project that we did at Unite Training Day. The entirety of it's there. You can also download the project, and in it you'll see the completed scenes. If you don't want to follow the tutorials, you just want to pick it apart. And just to reiterate, if anyone missed it, the guys have lots of feedback that they're giving and interacting with you on the developer preview forum. So go to that and talk to the developers directly after this. If you missed any of this, we'll post it on the YouTube channel so you can watch again. And obviously you can ask questions at the bottom of this video, but the best place to ask them is on the forum, and do provide your feedback there. Cool. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.